Hello and welcome to this edition of Exotic Gardening UK, and in this week's episode we'll be looking at jobs to do in the garden in February. Hi and welcome to this edition of Exotic Gardening UK on this very cold morning. It's currently -4 as I film this, and as you can see the plants around me are completely frozen through. But it might not be like this every February. It might be more spring-like and not frosty at all, but February can often be the coldest month of the year. And we've got through the cold months of November, December, January, now into February, so spring is not too far away, but unfortunately, like I said, it can be the coldest month of the year, and like what's expected in this particular year, we could have an extremely cold period in February, so plants that have been protected so far might need extra protection, and we might just have to face up to the fact that some of our sort of half-hardy tender plants might not make it through if we get a sustained very cold period, but I will be protecting some plants further than I already have. So in this episode we'll be doing jobs for February, which will include things like sowing seeds, getting on with garden landscaping projects, checking up on the dry stored bulbs, and having a look around the garden. Now the ground may be frozen completely through in February, but there's still some jobs you can do in terms of thinking about landscaping projects. So one project I'm doing this February is creating some access off the deck straight through into the garden. So here I have got basically a mound of soil because I had a bed around here which was retained by this brick wall, and as you can see I've already got the sledgehammer out and I've removed a lot of this wall, and now I need to remove all this soil behind me, which will allow some steps to come down off the deck into this area. So I'll continue this basically by removing the soil, putting some sleepers here to retain the edge of the soil, and then with these supports for the steps I will attach these to the deck, level them off at the ground, and then put my decking on there to produce some nice steps that will go into the garden this way. And obviously I can get rid of all this rubble because there's not much else to do in the garden in terms of admiring flowers or watering and things in winter. So doing sort of manual jobs like this, clearing the garden or doing some maintenance like this is a good way to use your time in the garden in February. Now you may remember back in, I think it was November, we stored away some Colocasias completely dry, and you can do this with caladiums as well, and we kept them dry in this box with some wood shavings, and it was kept in the house warm, so it was at least, well, it was around 20 degrees because it was kept sort of in a warm room. So I've not looked at it since November, so in February now we're going to have a look in here and we're going to see how they're doing. You don't need to do this, but it's just useful to see if you've got anything rotting, and you can get rid of rotting material. So let's have a look and see what they Colocasias look like now. So we can see we've got one here. Remember, this was all fleshy material and I didn't remove at the time, and you can see it's dried off really well. You can still see the sulphur powder, that yellowy stuff on there. And if I press it, what you're checking for is it's nice and firm and not squidgy, because squidgy means it's rotted away. So that's nice and firm. But I will remove some of this material here because we don't need it and it could eventually rot away, so we don't want that. And you can see little shoots around the edge here, nice white firm material, so that's ideal. So I'll put that one back. I'll just check on another just to see if it's doing okay as well. And this one is actually rotted away, so we'll get rid of that one, so we don't want that. And we've got another one here, again, just remove that outer material because we don't need. And that one's nice and firm as well. And I think there was some more. Let's have a look. Yeah. There's a big one here. Yeah, that's nice and firm. This was the mammoth. You can see the shoot, quite pink actually. But we can just remove that material. And you can see that's nice and firm, nice and healthy. So in a few weeks' time we'll be starting these off. But at the moment they can stay nice and dry back in the sawdust, and I'll put them back in the house. So I was just checking on them. If you had caladiums, again, same sort of setup, just check on them, make sure they're not rotting. Another job you can do in February is take cuttings of your cuttings. So if you've overwintered things like Solenstomen or Coleus, or in this case the Iracine here, and it's grown a bit, if you've got grow lights on, then you can actually take cuttings of these. So these have grown really well, so pretty slow, but they've grown sturdy, and there's enough material here to start taking cuttings. And as I've shown in previous videos, which I'll show a link to above, very easy to do, and keep these on a heat mat or propagator, and you'll end up with more and more plants ready to establish in garden or pots later on in the season. So a job we can do in January and February is to get Dahlias started in order to take cuttings in March and April, and then planting out in May and June. So here we have a Dahlia, and this is Gold Crown with wonderful cactus style flowers, really deep orange and gold colour. And this is a bought tuber, but this obviously works with tubers you may have had overwintering that you may have dug up the previous year. But if I just open this tuber, obviously when you're buying these you've got to look for ones that are nice and plump and no shriveled tubers or anything like that, because they can obviously not grow very well. So let's take this one out of the packet and have a closer look. So the plant is, that's the old stem. So this is the plant that way up, and these tubers are basically going to feed the plant and get it started into growth. And around the base of the stem, that's where the dormant eyes are, or the buds, and that's where we're going to get our cuttings from. So it's good to start this in winter, so February is ideal, because then you've got plenty of time for it to start growing and get cuttings. And one thing I've learned quite recently is from expert Dahlia growers is that actually cuttings of named varieties grow stronger and with better, deeper colours, more intense colours, than if you just keep this tuber going. So all you need to do is get some sort of seed tray or container, and it doesn't really matter what sort of compost you're using, because all you're doing is starting this into growth, so you're just keeping it slightly moist. So this is just multi-purpose compost, and it doesn't really need to be deep, so I've just made a little depression here. I'm just going to lay this over the top. If any of these tubers, these parts here, remove themselves from the main plant, then you can throw them away because they don't grow on their own. They need to be connected to the actual plant. All these, thankfully, are all connected, so I've just laid that out. Looks a bit like an octopus with its legs there. And all we're doing is just moving the compost over the tuber, and you want the middle part still above the compost level. And like I said, it doesn't need to be covered very well, because you're not going to get a plant growing in here for a long time. All we're doing is basically waking it up and getting those dormant buds to shoot, and then this is kept in the heated greenhouse. Going to put this on a heat mat, and in probably 3 or 4 weeks we'll have cuttings or shoots long enough to take cuttings. So now I'll put a little bit of water on here just to get it started, and then that will go on the heat mat. Now another job for February is sowing seeds. There's 2 types of seeds that we can sow in February. Those that are really erratic, so things like a lot of palm trees and tree seeds and banana seeds that can take many months or just a few weeks to germinate. It doesn't really matter what time of year you germinate them because it can be so long. So February is a good month to do them, because if they do germinate pretty quickly, the light levels will be getting longer by the time we get into March and April, and if they do take 6 months or more, there'll still be hopefully some nice light levels much further on into the year. And the other types of seeds we can sow in February are those plants that just take a long time to grow, especially the annuals if you want to make a display in the first year, obviously, because they're annuals. So things like Solenstomen or Coleus, you can grow in February, begonias as well, things like that that just are very tiny seeds and just take a long time to produce plants that are usable in the garden. So February is a very good time to start sowing those seeds, and I've gone through my collection of seeds. I'm starting to sow them now. So banana seeds have gone in, and also I'll be sowing some other seeds at the end of the month, such as some of my selenium seeds as well, so that I have nice big plants for planting out later in the season. Now, I've mentioned that if we get a really cold period in February, that the protection I've done on plants isn't enough and you need to go further. So things like this half-hardy palm, well, this is Trachycarpus latisectus. So far it's been fine. It's been on the borderline of damage, but it's been fine because it's got canopy of the bamboo hedge and this loquat tree, and that's provided enough protection to keep it looking okay. But if we get sustained cold, and especially if we get under -5, then what I'll do is basically cover this up completely. I'll tie the leaves together with some string like that and wrap fleece all the way around it, layer and layer and layer, not just one layer, you need layers and layers, and that will keep the edge of the cold hitting this plant. So that's what I'll do if it gets very cold. Alternatively, what you can do is get some posts in the ground, knock them in, put a bit of plastic over the top, and that'll give it some protection, and then you can put an old duvet or more fleece over the top for extra protection. And that's similar with the tree ferns as well. So you can, at the moment there's straw in there which is adequate down to about -5 for short periods, but when we get down to -6 and lower, or really cold periods for weeks, before you get to that really cold stage, you need to protect them further than just straw in the crowns. So you might have to sacrifice the leaves or just bend them down and put fleece all the way around, or straw in like a wire cage and then fleece around that. Or you can even use sleeping bags to put over the top of a tree fern, and that will keep them more protected than not. So if we get sustained cold, which you can get in February, being probably the coldest month along with January, then that's the route you have to take if you want to protect your tenderish plants. Thank you for watching this edition of Exotic Gardening UK. If you've not subscribed, please do so with the button below, and I'll see you next time.